called a chatcast?
Yeah.
I've never heard that.
What? Hey, guy.
Hey, gal.
What's going on?
Not much. Let's do this.
I feel like we should be honest that you had a false start with this podcast once before. If you go on the internet, you'll see the Danny Cevallos show. It was a different format. I was the producer behind the scenes. We decided to make this switch basically because this is more the format of the stuff that you and I enjoy listening to. This more candid conversation. You're very used to structure. You got to be in and out in a certain amount of seconds. You got to look at a certain camera at a certain time. This is not like that. This is just you and me at the dinner table, just like debriefing about our day the way that we do anyway. And I was thinking about the show when you said you wanted to bring it back. I was thinking, okay, let's make it a little bit more fun. Like some of these issues can be dark. They can be downers. But I like when people are unfiltered with each other. And I feel like husband and wife, like I'll say stuff to you that nobody else will say. You'll say stuff to me for sure that no one else will say. And we poke holes in each other's arguments or thoughts on what we're working on. And it gives me a lot of ideas. I don't know about you, but I find it to be really helpful. And I thought, like, let's share that as part of the Danny Cevallos show V2.
Yeah, not to sound corny, but you know, your background as an investigative journalist and covering the courts so much. When I come home and I talk about my cases, you know, I mostly don't have a lot of folks to bounce ideas off of at work. So when I talk to you, your eye and you listening to sort of some of my cases and situations I have, you give me a lot of great ideas. And so it's always to my benefit to come home and talk about the facts of a particular case or a challenge I have, even in court. Since you've covered so many cases, I often find it really helpful to throw out my ideas to you.
Yeah, and I find it really helpful because I didn't go to law school. So I'm like making emotional decisions about what I should have or what information I should get. And you're really good at telling me what the law actually says in a way that I can digest it quickly, which is why you're on TV and do this for a living. But anyway, here's the new format. It's going to be familiar to you because it's just like our dinner table conversation. But basically, we're going to tell each other about two stories that we find interesting. We'll go back and forth. And we'll just have our dinner table chat.
And that's, again, if you're producing it, I'm willing to try it.
Willing to try it. So I'll introduce you, you introduce me, and then we can critique and see how well the other person did.
Okay, but here's the thing. I know you don't like introductions or compliments, so I think you're going to critique anything I say.
Well, but I actually came up with this with that in mind because I thought I really don't want to introduce myself.
Right.
But I like introducing you.
Okay.
I'm very proud of you. Okay. Danny Cevallos is an NBC legal analyst, a trial attorney, and a magic hobbyist.
Yes, that's actually true.
Who dedicates his days to the rule of law and his evenings to explaining things to his children.
Thank you. Well, mine is more straightforward, not surprisingly. Sarah Ganem is a Pulitzer Prize winning. Oh, okay. All right.
I was just taking a pause.
Okay.
See how I was doing so far. Okay. Danny has argued cases in courtrooms across the country, including New York, the U.S. Virgin Islands, and Puerto Rico. And for the last decade, he's been on television analyzing the biggest legal stories of our time. When he's not breaking down indictments or constitutional questions, Danny can usually be found playing 80s ballads on the keyboard, learning new magic tricks, surfing obscure Wikipedia pages. This is my favorite. Putting his muscles to good use by hauling his wife's Amazon boxes to the apartment that we share.
Yeah, that is true. I mean, I didn't realize being married would involve
so many boxes.
A part-time job where I have to go down and pick up boxes. But you know what I find? I find that there's a kind of schadenfreude. I don't know if it's schadenfreude or what it is on Instagram, that there are other husbands out there that go through the same thing. So that actually makes me feel better. I kind of get it. And I also get that you're ordering stuff for the household. It's not all
Listen, on behalf of
shoes.
all wives, we are not at fault here.
I know. Okay? No, I agree. I
The
understand.
system has changed. And now we have boxes, and they put, one paper towel in every box.
I get it. I understand. It's mostly good for the household. But there are days when I go down and I have to get a I have to get a card. Okay. All right.
Your turn.
Sarah Ganem is a Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist, an adjunct professor at Columbia Journalism School, and editor of the online magazine Switchboard. She is a former CNN correspondent and film and podcast producer. And that's it. I kept it short and sweet because I do know that you will start sweating and cringing if I am too laudatory, if I give you too much.
That was factual.
Yes.
And I like it.
Yes.
All right. First story, would you like to go first?
Sure, yeah. I may be violating journalism rules by covering this story as an alum of the school, but I realized you are able to objectively cover your own alma mater. Now, I'm sure you've heard, we've talked about it, former University of Michigan head coach Sherrone Moore is at the center of a two-headed legal firestorm after the chaos of last week. Hours after the university terminated Moore for cause, and that's key here, the university cited credible evidence he violated internal policy by having an inappropriate relationship with a subordinate, and a subordinate who looks quite a bit younger than him. And I should add, he's married with kids. Moore was arrested by Michigan police and charged with felony third-degree home invasion, stalking, and breaking and entering in connection with an alleged incident at the home of the woman he had a relationship with. Under Michigan law, third-degree home invasion, Sarah, that's a felony. Stalking, breaking and entering, those are misdemeanor offenses. He got $25,000 bond, which doesn't sound like much, but you can get a PR bond, a personal recognizance bond, basically no bail for these charges. From a contractual standpoint, because there are two major legal issues here. Contractually, and you'll see this a lot on ESPN and sports reporting, Michigan's decision to fire Moore with cause under the terms of his 5-year multi-million-dollar deal means the University of Michigan can avoid a hefty buyout that would otherwise be due upon termination without cause. And don't look for Moore to bother to challenge this in court. I think he's got too many other problems. And then meanwhile, his criminal case is huge. I covered the arraignment live for NBC News, and it was crazy to see him, a former college football coach at one of the most storied programs in the country, in prison white, in a arraignment cell, being video arraigned in Washtenaw County, a place where I spent many years of my life, well, several years of my life. And so this case is going to move forward. It's going to track like any other sort of criminal case in the system, except that originally I thought this was going to be a simple assault. He's charged with a home invasion type crime, felony, very serious. He's looking at real prison time. This blows my mind.
Okay, here's my one question about this case. And I think you happen to know this jurisdiction really well, because isn't this like one of the few that still live streams all of their court hearings?
Right. You know, you talk about it. I wonder how many out there have these strange listening habits and podcast habits. And my strange one, my guilty pleasure, I was hoping this wouldn't come out right away, is I love watching live court hearings, which sounds insane because I spend my day covering court.
No, but you love this stuff.
I love it. I love it, and I love it when I get to sit in court and see any crazy case. Unfortunately, there are podcasters and YouTubers out there who basically curate the craziest court cases, and more courts are live streaming. And what's happening, and this is fascinating, there are certain states that do a lot of live streaming. Michigan happens to be one, and Washtenaw County in Ann Arbor is one that live streams all the time. And what you're seeing is some of these judges are becoming minor celebrities. And this happened to be in a courtroom that I would say I watch or listen to almost daily, if not every other day.
Do you think these judges tend to be more conservative, more liberal? Because I'm leading up to a question, that's like a big question I have. Like, are they more, and I don't mean liberal and conservative in the political sense. I mean it in like the application of the law.
Exactly. So there is a general rule of thumb when you're practicing criminal defense. Given the choice, you would always rather have your client in a more urban, more densely populated area than out in the suburbs or, God forbid, a rural area. And here's why. Generally speaking, when you live in a city, you think about it. Live in a city, you're used to seeing crazy stuff. So the judges in a city like Philadelphia, where I spent many years, every day they're seeing guns and drugs and kilos of this and opiates.
They're a little hardened.
They're hardened, right? So you get people who aren't going to be as shocked about, say, a domestic violence case or a simple assault or something like that. Meanwhile, out in the suburbs where people, God forbid, they clutch their pearls if there's any kind of crime, they are much, much harsher on crime. Police have less to do.
Deal.
Exactly right. I mean, when you get out to the suburbs and rural areas, DUIs are a big business. You see a lot of people who are much more serious about crime. So generally speaking, Ann Arbor is not exactly a huge urban place, but it's close to Detroit, and you have the university, and you have a lot of odd characters. And Ann Arbor's kind of what I would call a crunchy town. So you have a lot of odd characters. I'd say you have slightly more drugs, suburban, but you have some city aspects.
Are the judges, do they tend to be more lenient?
I don't know that I would call it lenient, but going back to that sort of they've seen it all. And when you're a judge that's seen it all, you tend to be a little more understanding. Like I said, I was rather surprised that Moore got such a high bond. And I know $25,000 doesn't sound like much for a multimillionaire, but what other people get, they can even expect to get out putting up no money up front. And honestly, $25,000, 10%, that means he pays $2,500. Right. It's not that much.
Okay, so this leads up to my question, which is, obviously, domestic violence we take very seriously. But as far as I can tell from the charging documents and everything that I've read and everything you and I have talked about, he didn't threaten her. He really only threatened himself.
Yes,
right?
And actually, I think this is going to be a defensible case for a couple. This is a couple things that I'm looking at right away. So you have a home invasion case, right? But how do we know, and we don't know any facts yet, but one of the things I might be thinking about from a defensive perspective is this is a place that presumably he had been invited over to many times before. He didn't go in with a ski mask over his head and break in through the window. He knew this person. He went over there. How do we know that he didn't have sort of a long-standing invitation?
A key to his girlfriend's house.
A key to his girlfriend's house. Now, the prosecution side is going to be, and they have more facts right now, that they had broken up. He probably didn't have that standing invitation. But if you're looking at this from a defense perspective, that's the first thing I would try to develop is to what degree was it just sort of expected they would come over, especially if this was a clandestine relationship. The nature of him going over there was sort of sneaky. So, I mean, you might have, again, beyond a reasonable doubt, you take it to trial. Here's what's going to happen, though. Someone like Sherrone Moore probably doesn't have the stomach to go to trial. There's going to be a plea coming. And there's a general rule of thumb. When you talk about when you start charging doctors or people in formerly high positions, these are folks that generally don't have the stomach for a trial. The people who go to trial and get good results and roll the dice are people with criminal histories who are unafraid of something like a jury trial.
Your clients.
Yeah, a lot of my clients, but a lot of my clients are not. A lot of my clients are white-collar types who have no stomach. Yep, no, you're right.
I was joking.
You're right. No, but I've had the full gamut, the full rainbow.
You actually have a pretty good batting average, I think, for a defense attorney.
Well, here's the thing. A lot of people ask defense attorneys, how many cases have you won? But,
you're supposed to win none.
Right. I mean, the odds are against us. O.J. Simpson ruined it for all of us because he created this image that if you're insanely guilty, if you spend enough money, you can get an acquittal. And that's just not always the case. I've seen some of the greatest lawyers in the world put on the greatest defense and still go down. But our job, and I remember the great Mark Garagos puts it this way. I love this analogy. Our job is really to give our clients the softest landing. All criminal defense attorneys, give them a soft landing. If that means pleading to something that avoids prison time, that's often a huge win, even though it is a conviction.
So to come full circle on Sherrone Moore, that's what you think is going to happen. He takes a plea. This kind of goes away. And in a couple of years, he might be back on the sidelines.
Oh, my gosh. You know what?
A lot of football coaches on the sidelines right now are formerly scandalous.
Everyone gets a second chance. It's amazing. And but here's the only reason I think that may not be true. Sherrone Moore didn't have enough time to become a juggernaut in the world of coaching. If we were talking about, say, a Nick Saban, obviously not Nick Saban himself, but a Nick Saban type, somebody with an incredible career, then all is forgiven. I mean, you look no further than the University of North Carolina, where they're willing to put up with Bill Belichick's shenanigans because he's one of the most winningest coaches in NFL history.
He's not alleged to have committed a crime.
No, exactly. Yes, he's not alleged to have done anything wrong, but there are a lot of hijinks going on at the University of North Carolina. And, look, they're willing to put up with it.
Yeah, it's good fodder for the pages.
Yes.
All right. Big swing here for me. My first story, I tend to gravitate to the media stories. But I saw yesterday Donald Trump is suing the British Broadcasting Corporation, the BBC, in court in Florida for $10 billion with a B in damages for defamation. Now, we've seen this from Trump before. He likes to sue media organizations for defamation. We've seen them settle to kind of make him go away. In this case, he claims a Panorama documentary misrepresented his January 6, 2021 speech by editing it in a way that made it look like he encouraged violence. Okay, here's my big question. The BBC is in the UK. It's the British Broadcasting Corporation. It is not a media organization that's based in the US. So how jurisdictionally is it going to work? Can he really sue a UK media company in the state of Florida, even in federal court?
Absolutely. And the only mistake he made, I think, was filing in Florida. I know he thinks Florida is a favorable jurisdiction, but the UK even has better defamation laws for a plaintiff. And here's the rule of defamation. Where was the publication?
Yeah, it didn't even air in the US. I was reading and I was like thinking, okay, maybe they have like offices in Florida or something. But it wasn't even on our airwaves. Like you couldn't even watch it here.
Right. So the test for jurisdiction is, did your action cause harm in that jurisdiction? And if so, as long as you can serve them, you can get personal jurisdiction. So
How
the
can
theory,
you prove that no one in Florida could have seen it.
Sure. If they could access it online, that's going to be enough. If they could go to YouTube and access it, then that's going to be enough. And even though, look, if I'm the BBC, I might try to fight it on that point. But if you're saying, if it's true, is it true that it wasn't never broadcast? I mean, after all, people can get packages that include the BBC on their cable or whatever. This is back in 2020. People presumably had cable packages that include the BBC. I mean, you know more about that than I do. So if it was, and it was broadcast in Florida, I mean, honestly, you could probably get jurisdiction in Nome, Alaska. You could get jurisdiction virtually anywhere that it was broadcast.
Them in the UK.
That is a great question because you have much more favorable language. I don't think the UK gives as huge judgments or verdicts. I don't think you see them in the stratosphere.
So we couldn't sue for billions.
Yes, but here's the thing. This is something that I think is really interesting here. About 25 years ago, when I first started practicing in New York, they had a different rule. Now, there's something in a complaint called the ad damnum clause. It's a Latin term. And what New York did away with, that was still in existence when I started practice here, was the practice of putting how much money you wanted in your complaint against someone. And back then, what I would see is somebody with a sprained ankle would demand $10 million, right? Which is way beyond what you would expect for a sprained ankle in terms of damages. But there was no rule. And if you're a plaintiff's attorney, why not ask for the sun, the moon, and the stars? Well, New York changed that, and they said you can't put dollar amounts because it's devastating to companies that they have a, quote, and I'm using air quotes, $10 billion case against them when really it doesn't have that true value. That's an imaginary value. So nowadays, you can't put a dollar amount in there. So this case illustrates why you should not have actual dollar amounts in the ad damnum clause because everybody's reporting on a $50 billion lawsuit, but that's just an imaginary number plucked out of the ether.
That's why he does it.
Yes.
Right? He does it because, and that's why, to be fair, a lot of plaintiffs do it. A lot of
all the time.
Attorneys do that because they want the headline that says we're suing for $10 billion, and then people like me in the media go,
report it.
Oh my God, we have to report this because they're seeking billions of dollars. You know, honestly, if he had sued the BBC seeking $1 million, the story would not have been as impactful. It wouldn't have made such a big splash.
Yes, and there's a rule of negotiation, too, that you never want to be the first one to make a demand. When I handle plaintiffs' work, you hold out as long as you can. The insurance company always wants, hey, can you give us a demand? Can you give us a demand? You hold out as long as you can because from a negotiation strategic perspective, under the sort of samurai Bushido code of negotiation, once you lock yourself into a demand, you're giving information to the other side. So there's every incentive for plaintiffs to throw out pie-in-the-sky numbers and every incentive for defendants to offer $1 the first time around. So when forced to commit, you make your demand $1 bajillion.
What, samurai what?
Bushido, some ancient code of conduct.
Did you read about that on Wikipedia?
Probably Wikipedia. I mean, actually, shamefully, probably from my youth Dungeons and Dragons, reading. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Your story number 2. Go ahead.
Okay. This is a case, Brian Walsh. This is a case in Massachusetts. This is a fascinating sort of true crime space story. A jury has now convicted him of first-degree murder in the disappearance and death of his wife, Anna Walsh, nearly 3 years after she vanished on New Year's Day in 2023. Prosecutors built their case on, I mean, if you saw any of the, and I watched a lot of this case, there was a chilling digital and physical trail. Internet searches of him, how to dispose body parts, dismemberment, surveillance video showing him driving all over town, buying cleaning supplies and tools, hundreds and hundreds of dollars of cleaning supplies, at least once with his young son on video. I mean, in my view, that's probably something that just offended the jury. And the discovery of blood-stained items in dumpsters linked to him, even though Anna's body, and sorry to be gruesome, no part of Anna's body has ever been found. Just before trial, Walsh tried a fascinating legal strategy. It's like a combination Hail Mary and prevent defense combined into one. And I know you're not the biggest sports fan, neither am I. Basically, it was quite a gamble. He pleaded guilty to 2 lesser counts: misleading police and illegally disposing of a human body. So he admitted essentially to dismembering his wife's body and disposing of it.
So I don't actually know that much about this story, so I have a couple of early questions.
Right.
Was the son, they shared this son?
It was their son.
It was their son. Okay. So he admits that he's driving around.
He's on video.
Okay, he's on video
Everywhere.
driving around with the son while he's getting rid of the son's mother.
Buying supplies to get rid of the
and
son's mother.
And then he admits guilt that he disposed of her body.
Yes.
But he's saying that he didn't kill her. He found her dead or something.
Exactly.
And then she just panicked and said, "Let's get rid of
He
the body."
panicked because he had just been convicted of art fraud and was awaiting sentencing, and he was actually on house arrest. So he shouldn't have even been driving around to these stores, by the way. But that was his theory, and they promised that in their opening statement. And I think what sunk him is that the only person in the world who could have testified that to this cockamamie theory that he came upstairs after cleaning the house at 2 a.m. after New Year's and found her dead and thought, not, hey, why don't I call the ambulance so they can confirm she died of some natural cause? He instead says, I'm in so much trouble already. I better dismember her and deposit her body all over town. They made that promise in opening statements. So that means what? One thing they had to do. They had to put him on the stand.
And he didn't testify?
He didn't testify. My theory is that he realized he was so sunk, why bother even testifying? Because he had to testify. They made promises in the opening statement, and you know from covering jury trials, you make a promise in the opening statement that your client's going to testify, and he never testifies.
He was going to testify?
They promised their theory of the case, that he came up, panicked, and dismembered her body. The only human on earth who could testify to that was him. This was fascinating because the strategy was so interesting. And, you know, the reason this is near and dear to me is there are very few no-body murder cases.
Oh, they never found any of these?
Never found any of her.
What? So all they really have is him driving around?
Exactly. Driving around buying thousands of dollars of cleaning supplies.
They can't actually prove what he was doing when he was driving around if they didn't find her body.
Yes, and this actually reminds me of a lot of our conversations. You are very defense-minded. You poke a hole at all the theories.
Well, I'm not.
You're exactly right. And by the way, this is why this is near and dear to me. As you know, one of the reasons we met and started dating is I had a very rare no-body murder case where there are maybe a handful of these every year because it's very hard to get rid of a body. So this is very personal to me. And what I learned from defending one of these is that a human body gives you so much information that the prosecution can develop a lot of their case and the defense can develop a lot of their defense on inconsistencies yielded from the evidence that you get from a body. And when you don't have a body, 2 things happen. The prosecution can fill in a lot of gaps with their imagination.
But so can the defense.
So can the defense. The defense arguably can always argue. They can get up in closing and say, we really don't know what happened. The reason this case was different is we do know what happened. We know at least that he dismembered the body.
Because he admitted it.
He admitted it, right?
So you say that.
So the theory had to be, you don't know why she died, but the only person you can believe is the least credible person in America. A guy who's been convicted of art fraud, and who lied to everybody about what happened to her body. So his credibility was shot.
Are you saying that if he hadn't pleaded guilty right before to dismembering and disposing of the body, that he might have been acquitted? Or might have had a better shot?
No, I think this gave him his best shot because had he gone to trial, the evidence was overwhelming.
Wow, all you said was that all they have is video of him driving around.
You know what? I didn't give you enough. You had internet searches of how to cut up a body. You had internet searches of where to dispose of a body. Then you have him not just driving once to Home Depot, Sarah, driving all over the place. Then he goes to a liquor store on a day that at the night when it's closed, gets out with a bag, goes to the dumpster, throws something away. There was evidence everywhere. So the theory goes, and I actually think this was a clever defense. And here's the thing. We defense attorneys...
Why couldn't they find any evidence? Because, I mean, you're so right. I remember very early in my career, a prosecutor told me the very first person that they always put on the stand in a murder trial was the coroner. Because they need, or the medical examiner, they need to prove that there was a death. Like, without that, where are you going with this case? So, but like, how is it? It was like, there a lot of time that passed or something? Like, how did they not ever find any of her?
There was a few days where, barely a few days, because he had developed this cockamamie story where she had started working in D.C. and was commuting. And he told everyone she had some real estate emergency on New Year's Day and had to go down to D.C., which that crumbled within a matter of days because it was absurd, right? I mean, she wasn't gone. She was dead. So what they did was, I mean, it was enough time for him to drive all over town and deposit parts of her body and buy massive amounts of cleaning supplies. Sarah, you can see it in the video. It's him pushing a giant cart full of drums, buckets. I mean, it's laughable. And that is why he pleaded guilty. The theory would have been that, look, I am going to lose. They are going to believe I dismembered the body and got rid of her. If I go to trial on that, they're going to find me guilty of that and find me guilty of murder. If I admit to all of the dismembering and concealing the body and lying, then I can fall back on the defense that everybody has in a no-body murder case, which is this. We don't know what happened. No one knows. And no one knows, as a defense attorney, you try to compare to reasonable doubt, right? If no one knows, reasonable doubt. It's not a bad idea. Maybe in another no-body case. But here's the thing. In almost all the no-body cases I've seen, almost all of them that I know of have been convictions. And I've developed this theory that because of that, the prosecution actually gets the advantage. They can come up with a theory. I do. I really do. And maybe this is from my own experience. They can fill in the gaps. And because they have the burden, the defense has a tough choice. They can either put on evidence to try and dispute it, but they don't know what happened either. Or maybe they do, depending on the client.
I think it's important we should tell our audience, I didn't tell you what stories I picked before we came in here today. You didn't tell me what stories you picked. It just happens to be that my second story is also a DV case. A little bit different, but also one where, unfortunately, there is a child involved.
I think they're important to you.
I mean, yes, but I mean, all of these stories are important to me. But this one I picked for... you're going to laugh, I think. There's a particular reason. I mean, I picked these cases because there's something interesting about them that maybe I don't understand or that I think it will be shocking to people to learn about the law and the intricacies of the law and the nuances of the law. But you're going to laugh because of the realm from which I picked this case. I have this sort of somewhat unhealthy addiction to trashy reality TV.
Great. I love it.
You love it?
I love it. Yeah, I do. I love it. My trashy version of that is so much more embarrassing. That
I have to disagree that you love it. You give me a hard time about it all the time.
No, I don't. I like it, and the stuff I listen to is so much worse.
Don't tell lies on the very first episode.
No, well, listen. I get a kick out of it. I know you like to listen to air traffic control, and I know you like trashy TV.
Okay.
See,
it's enough.
Okay.
I'm gonna pull up your YouTube.
I know. No, mine's worse.
You want to get into it?
Mine's worse. I'll admit it right now. A month ago, I listened to a Dungeons and Dragons session to fall asleep to. All right? 3 hours of nerds rolling dice with wizards. And for some reason, that's soothing to me, and it puts me to sleep.
Traffic control is really fascinating because there's comedy in there.
Yeah.
Like this group of people who sit in these towers who have this relationship with people they never see, who are flying tin cans 30,000 feet in the air with people inside of them, and it leads to funny moments.
Yes.
Anyway, we've made a huge pivot. Okay. There's this one show that I watch sometimes while you're putting the kids to bed, which I know is not your favorite thing, but there's this one show that I watch while you're reading Harry Potter and The Hobbit to our 2 beautiful daughters. I am sometimes watching a show called Seeking Sister Wives.
Love it.
It's on TLC, which is, if people don't know, the Learning Channel.
I love that because nobody's learning anything on that channel anymore.
It's the perfect name for TLC.
It's the greatest.
I learned so much from the Learning Channel. Anyway, this show is so cringe, Danny. Even for me, it's so bad. I can't even watch every family in it. Like, there's a couple of families that I've been following for a few years, and I just like fast forward through the rest of them because it's really, yeah. Anyway, one of the most famous families to come out of this show is the Merrifield family. Husband named Garrick Merrifield. And just to tell you all you need to know about Garrick, on Reddit, the Reddit boards that focus on seeking sister wives, they have shortened his name just to Ick.
Mm-hmm.
They just call him Ick.
Okay.
Okay, so just like use that as a descriptor. You know, that's like if you
I get it.
Imagine. Okay.
I get it.
He's got this longtime wife, Danielle, who he actually legally divorced a couple of years ago because they've been trying to bring in a second wife from Brazil. They've had a couple of false starts. I think they had 3 false starts, 2 or 3. They're trying to bring this second wife in under the 90-day fiancé visa, which, as you did say,
K-1 visa.
A K-1, yes, a K-1 visa. So this season, they finally successfully get a second wife into the U.S. under a K-1 visa. They go to the courthouse, they get married, and the season ends. But in the meantime, you know, we don't know if the cameras were still filming when this happened. But since the season ended, this news broke that Garrick was arrested and charged with domestic violence against the new wife. This is in, I don't know if I'm saying the county right, Chaffee County, Colorado.
Mm-hmm.
He's facing misdemeanor domestic violence charge that stems from, and this is why I picked this story, it stems from obstructing telephone service.
Yeah.
So, okay. I didn't know this was against the law. Basically, here's what the court documents say. His wife told police that during an argument, he took her phone and prevented her from calling for help by turning off the Wi-Fi so she could not contact her family in Brazil or emergency services.
Cutting off contact.
I didn't know that was like taking someone's phone is against the law.
Yes, I don't do a ton of DV cases, but it makes sense when I look at the trends in legislation. And over the years, I've seen an expansion of what the definition is of violence. You know, we're not living in the 80s anymore where violence means someone has to have a black eye. Essentially, the idea of cutting off communication, it's the digital equivalent of locking her in the attic, right? If you cut off her access to Wi-Fi and you take away her phone. Now,
but
does the statute...
People aren't legally... what's the word? You don't have a right to Wi-Fi.
It's not a right. Well, we're not talking about a right. We're talking about access
to Wi-Fi.
Well, she's a resident.
What if they just didn't have Wi-Fi in their house?
That's different. There's all kinds of distinctions in the law between something you never had in the first place and something that you have that is yours and that is taken away, right? That's like saying theft. Theft is the same as, well, you stole my wallet. Well, what if you never had a wallet? It's not the same. Okay. She had a phone, she had property, and it was taken away from her. She had access to the internet. By the way, don't get me wrong. This is I suspect we would find this is a recent development in domestic violence law. But it makes sense to me because one of the hallmarks of domestic violence law isn't always just pure violence. It's cutting people off. It's locking them in their room, right? And this is the digital equivalent of locking them in their room. And even though I don't think the statute would make this distinction, it's more pronounced if somebody is from another country and their only family members are in that other country and they're more vulnerable. So it makes sense to me.
Let's just flip this for a second. All the time, women take their husbands, boyfriends, cell phones, change their passwords, go into their social media. All that's a crime?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I know that accessing illegally or accessing a computer without permission is usually a crime. What? So, absolutely. Yes, absolutely. Yeah, doing that is likely a crime. The reality is people just don't get prosecuted for it because there's obviously a burden of proof. I mean, if you know my passcode, you can get in. I don't think iPhone checks to see what face is or records what face is doing it. So you might have some challenges there. But absolutely, when these are prosecuted, they're generally pretty easy to prove because you show someone had access, you show that they entered the password, that they unlawfully accessed a computer.
I feel like this is really bad news for female detectives. I say this like with quotation marks, like women who are, spying.
It is bad news. I mean, it's bad news for either partner, but it's long been the case that you cannot unlawfully access someone else's digital communication. So this doesn't surprise me that much. Now, when you say turning off the Wi-Fi, by the way, parents do that as a punishment all the time for their kids.
Yeah, that's another one. Like,
yeah, but that's different.
Is it though legally
sure it is.
different?
Yeah.
You may say it's different because a parent.
Exactly. That is the difference. The difference is
because
parents.
The motive is pure versus not pure.
No.
Like, is the law going to make that distinction?
No, because parents have far more rights to discipline their minor children. You can, with children, you can giveth and taketh away. With a grown-up adult,
you can.
You cannot.
I just think this is really bad news for all of the Learning Channel
Yeah.
participants, like all of reality TV. Because people are constantly on there saying, like, oh, I took his phone while he was in the shower, and I went into his Instagram, and I looked at his DMs. Or I changed his passwords, and I'm not going to give them back until you give me what I want. Like, all of that's just, like, people admitting to crimes.
I mean, generally speaking, one person in a relationship has tremendous power to unilaterally, one-sidedly create a lot of legal problems for the other one. Any one person can escalate legally and essentially lay waste to a family.
Well, in my research for this new family venture, I learned something really interesting, which is that with chatcasts, you need to end quickly because otherwise people will turn it off when they realize it's ending, and it messes with your completion rate. So yeah, goodbye. That's it. See you later. This was fun.